In today's video, we'll do a deeper dive into Tesla, understanding its pre-earnings personality. Now, Tesla reports earnings on October 19th after the market closes, and we're trying to gain any clues that we may have around what price action will do from now until earnings or until it reports earnings. Now, for this exercise, I'm using our pre-earnings analysis indicator, along with the edge signals, market pulse, and extended Keltner channels indicators. The pre-earnings and edge signals indicators are free for Volatility Box members. It's included with your membership. You can download it from our website. That's tosindicators.com/indicators. And there, look for the pre-earnings analysis tool along with the edge signals indicator. And then the extended Keltner channels and market pulse indicators are free for everyone. Now, using these tools, let's take a look to see what clues our chart is giving us. I have this set to a 5-year historical period for our research, which is what it's using in terms of analyzing historical data for these labels. Now, 3 days prior to earnings, and this is 3 calendar days, price action inside of Tesla tends to rise about 70% of the time headed into earnings, tends to fall about 30% of the time. So already we know price tends to rise more often than it tends to fall. On average, that rise is about 3.51%, which isn't absurdly high, especially given Tesla's volatility, but it does give you some sort of metrics around what to expect. Now, our next set of labels here give us implied volatility data. Using implied volatility data, we can see it tends to rise about 55% of the time, tends to fall about 45% of the time. So no real edge here, no clues in terms of the IV to try and play this with options. The one thing that does stand out is while we rise a little bit more often, the average implied volatility rise is much greater than IV falling as we head into earnings. Now, using those clues, that gives us pre-earnings tendencies, pre-earnings patterns. We can now do a little bit deeper dive into what our technicals are telling us. Now, zooming in, one thing that stands out is we have our Keltner channel wedges that have been plotting ever since October 3rd. These Keltner channel wedges tell you when price action is outside of the 3.0 Keltner channel. That's what I have this tool currently set to, 3.0, and that tells us that price is currently overextended. Now today, we had fairly bullish activity inside of Tesla, where we had a bullish engulfing candle, the Keltner channel wedges stopped plotting, and we also broke outside of this little trend line that we've been respecting now for quite some time, again, ever since October 3rd, 4th time period, so the beginning of October. So a few different signs here that point to bullish activity. We have earnings tendencies that show us we tend to rise headed into earnings. We've broken outside of our trend line, and we've now stopped printing our Keltner channel wedges. Now, 3 days prior to earnings would be tomorrow, Friday's activity. We're using whatever the open price is. We have an average, which is about 3.51%, that Tesla tends to rise headed from there up until earnings. Now, the best way, or the easiest way rather, that I think to play this move would be using straight up the stock, the underlying of Tesla, given that the implied volatility here doesn't really provide us with any lucrative edge. I would have been a buyer of calls if this number 55% was a little bit greater than that 50-50 split, but given that it's a 50-50 split or close to it, and the volatility of Tesla options along with how expensive they are, I find the underlying to be a slightly easier way to play this. Very simple notion of using a stop below the low of today, assuming we open somewhere in between this candle, and trying to target that same 3.51% or maybe even a touch to the market pulse line. For all Volatility Box members, one other exercise you might find useful is to go back and study these previous earnings to see what his price action tended to do 3 days prior to earnings. If we look back at, say, the most recent earnings cycle, after that 3-day period, we gapped up, touched the market pulse line, and by the time we actually had earnings reported, you can see the move that Tesla made from the actual opening price up until the day prior to Tesla reporting earnings. So that gives you an idea of how to use this tool and what to expect. One other last trick that I'll share before I close out this video is to come inside of the pre-earnings tab and play around with the number of days to understand how Tesla moves as we get closer into earnings. For example, if I increase this to 4 days, so we use what the data would have been if we ran this yesterday, 4 days prior to earnings, we had about a 55 to 45 split. So again, closer to that 50-50 mark that we saw with implied volatility. However, the average there a little bit greater, 5.54%. As we decrease this, so we now have today's activity, so we're looking for 3 days now, you can see how that number changes. Let's say we get closer into earnings, drop this down to 2 days prior to earnings. You can see what the average move tends to be, and you can also see that, hey, we're still maintaining that 70-30 split. And as we get 1 day prior to earnings, so if I decrease this one more time, we can see how that number changes one more time. Our still rise versus fall number stays the same with that 70-30 split, but the actual average percentage tends to drop. So it gives you an idea of what to expect in terms of moves as we head closer and closer into earnings. Same thing with the implied volatility information here. You can see the implied volatility 1 day prior to earnings tends to really drop to that 50-50 split with an average of 5% versus the average drop of negative 2.43%. So hopefully with today's video, you have a few different tricks in terms of using the pre-earnings analysis indicator to better understand the earnings personality of any stocks that you're looking to play moves headed into earnings. Again, for all Volatility Box members, you can download the indicators that I've discussed from our website. That's tosindicators.com/indicators. And there you can find the pre-earnings analysis tool, you can find the extended Keltner channels, you can find the market pulse along with the edge signals indicator as well. So a lot of different options that you'll find on our website. All right, take care everyone, good luck trading, and I'll see you in the next update.